Let's be honest, if you think the Western died with the credits on Gunsmoke, you've swallowed Hollywood's biggest myth. The 1970s weren't just the end of an era, they were wild, risky, and full of buried gold. What if I told you the best rule-breaking stories got lost in the dust, ready to ride off the beaten path? Saddle up, this is where the legends are hiding. The Quest 1976. It's 1976. The Western on TV is gasping for air, and the world has already moved on to cop shows and family sitcoms. Out of nowhere, NBC drops The Quest, and it's not just another cowboy shoot-'em-up. No, this one stars a young Kurt Russell and Tim Matheson as Morgan and Quentin Bodine, two brothers with a mission that's pure dynamite: find their kidnapped sister, stolen by outlaws, and lost somewhere on the American frontier. What made The Quest different wasn't just the action or the horses, though you got plenty of both, but the mood. This was a show drenched in 70s realism. Forget the gleaming saloons and perfect gunfighters. These brothers make mistakes, get hurt, and stumble through a West that feels dangerous and new. Every episode, the Bodine brothers ride further into uncertainty, crossing paths with outlaws, outcasts, and desperate folks who don't care about happy endings. NBC thought it was their answer to the epic miniseries craze. They even launched the show with a 2-hour movie. Critics saw something special: stories with grit, a family torn apart, and some of the best location shooting on TV. But there was a problem. Audiences in 1976 just didn't know what to make of it. The show's bleak tone, gritty violence, and broken heroes were light years away from the classic Western comfort food they grew up on. Ratings took a nosedive, and the network pulled the plug after just 15 episodes. But here's the twist. The Quest didn't just fade away. It became a cult favorite for fans who stumbled onto reruns years later. Today, if you find someone who remembers it, odds are they'll tell you it deserved better. This was a Western with bite, a story about loss, loyalty, and refusing to give up, even when the world tells you to quit. If you want to see where the modern TV drama got its soul, dig up The Quest. It's a lost classic that still hits hard. The Oregon Trail 1977. There's no gentle prairie breeze in The Oregon Trail, just dust, desperation, and the kind of drama that makes Little House on the Prairie look like a vacation brochure. NBC thought they were reviving the wagon train formula, but what they really made was a Western that got its hands dirty and never apologized. Rod Taylor stars as Evan Thorpe, a widowed farmer with a heavy past and 2 kids to protect. The dream? Make it to Oregon, where the promise of land and new beginnings shimmers on the horizon. But forget about smooth rides and friendly neighbors. The Oregon Trail serves up danger at every river crossing. Each episode slams you with another gut punch: raging storms, disease, feuds, and sometimes just plain bad luck. This show is relentless. It doesn't coddle its characters or its viewers. So why did it disappear? Simple. The 1970s audience wanted their TV with a side of comfort, not existential dread. The Oregon Trail was all about consequences. The travelers were constantly reminded how high the stakes really were. Characters died. Trust was hard to find. Hope flickered, but it was always on the verge of being snuffed out by reality. It's a miracle anyone survived a single episode. Behind the scenes, the production was just as wild. Real wagons, real mud, and no special effects to save the day. The show's visual grit was matched only by its writing, which never backed down from tough themes. But NBC got cold feet fast, airing only a handful of episodes before quietly dropping it from the schedule. The result? A series that's been hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone brave enough to give it another shot. But here's the kicker. The Oregon Trail might be one of the most authentic frontier shows ever made for television. It took the risks no one else would, gave its characters real problems, and asked the viewer to face the wilderness with them. If you want a Western that doesn't sugarcoat history, if you want to see what survival really looked like, hunt down The Oregon Trail. It's the show you never knew you needed. The Guns of Will Sonnet. Every family has secrets, but none pack a punch quite like the Sonnets. The Guns of Will Sonnet is the kind of Western that takes the myth of the American frontier and cranks it up to 11, then asks what it really costs to chase a legend. This series started in the late 60s, but its reruns rode strong into the 70s, and for good reason. Walter Brennan's performance as Will Sonnet is the stuff TV dreams are made of. Here's the setup. Will Sonnet is a grizzled old scout, wandering the West with his grandson Jeff in search of Will's estranged son, Jeff's father, who's gained a reputation as the fastest gun alive. Sound simple? Not even close. Every episode, the pair tumble into a new town, finding traces of the missing Jim Sonnet. Some folks worship him as a hero, others curse his name, and all the while, Will and Jeff try to find the man behind the legend. What sets The Guns of Will Sonnet apart isn't just the gun smoke and drama, though you get plenty of both. It's the heart. Brennan's Will isn't some cold-blooded vigilante. He's driven by love, regret, and the kind of stubborn hope that refuses to die, no matter how many times the world lets him down. And let's not forget his famous line, delivered with a wink, "No brag, just fact." That catchphrase became a calling card, a quiet promise that this wasn't just another shootout show. ABC gave The Guns of Will Sonnet a chance, but in an era when viewers were getting pickier, it was easy for a show like this to slip through the cracks. Still, it found a second life in syndication, and anyone who stumbles onto it today is in for a masterclass in character-driven storytelling. It's not about who draws fastest, it's about what drives a man to keep searching, no matter the odds. If you're hunting for a Western with real depth, The Guns of Will Sonnet still packs a punch. Bearcats, 1971. Forget everything you know about classic Westerns, because Bearcats throws the rule book straight out the window and sets it on fire. This isn't just a show with cowboys and horses, it's a madcap adventure where the heroes cruise around the early 1900s in a tricked-out Stutz Bearcat automobile, chasing criminals and dodging danger in a world on the brink of modernity. Rod Taylor and Dennis Cole star as Hank Brackett and Johnny Reach, two tough-as-nails troubleshooters who'll take on any job if the price is right. They don't care if it's tracking down outlaws, foiling train robbers, or rescuing innocents from a crooked sheriff. They'll handle it as long as they can roar into town behind the wheel of their gleaming, roaring Bearcat. The car itself is almost a character, zipping across wide-open plains and dusty back roads like something out of a dream. CBS hoped Bearcats would spark a new wave of action-packed, fun-loving westerns for a new generation. And for a brief, blazing moment, it almost worked. The show was pure adrenaline, wild chases, clever cons, and a tongue-in-cheek sense of humor that set it apart from every other cowboy saga on TV. But in 1971, the world wasn't ready for cowboys with cars, and the series sputtered out after just 13 episodes. Still, those episodes are pure gold for anyone who loves adventure, style, and the thrill of watching two heroes outsmart the odds. Bearcats was ahead of its time, blending classic Western grit with the promise of a new, faster future. Today, it stands as proof that sometimes the best stories are the ones that don't fit the mold. Want a Western that's equal parts grit and goofiness? Buckle up for Bearcats, because this ride is one of a kind. Heck Ramsey, 1972-74. If you think you've seen every twist on the Western formula, think again. Heck Ramsey turns the whole genre on its head and adds a dash of Sherlock Holmes for good measure. Richard Boone, already a legend from Have Gun Will Travel, stars as Hector Heck Ramsey, an aging gunfighter who's put away his six-shooter in favor of fingerprint powder and detective work. Set at the dawn of the 20th century, this show isn't about endless shootouts or barroom brawls. Instead, Heck solves crimes using newfangled science and relentless logic. He's part lawman, part detective, and 100% unstoppable. NBC's Sunday mystery movie lineup was famous for its clever genre-bending shows, but Heck Ramsey was the only one that rode into town on horseback. What makes Heck Ramsey so compelling isn't just the novelty of old meets new, it's the character himself. Boone plays Ramsey as a man out of step with his own time, wise enough to know when to use his fists and when to use his brain. He's haunted by his past, but refuses to let it define him, and his new life as a detective is filled with just as much danger and drama as his gunslinging days. Despite strong reviews and a devoted fan base, Heck Ramsey struggled to find its place in a world where westerns were fading fast. NBC pulled the plug after only 2 seasons, but those episodes are packed with rich stories and some of the best crime-solving the Old West ever saw. If you crave a Western with brains, heart, and more than a little grit, Heck Ramsey is calling your name. It's a show that reminds you, sometimes the deadliest weapon is a sharp mind. Branded? There's a fine line between hero and outcast, and no show walks that line quite like Branded. This series puts Chuck Connors, already famous for The Rifleman, in the boots of Jason McCord, a cavalry captain falsely accused of cowardice and kicked out of the Army in disgrace. The opening credits alone are unforgettable. McCord's uniform stripped, his saber snapped in half, his name dragged through the mud as the haunting theme music plays. But here's where Branded goes from good to great. Instead of heading off to hide in shame, McCord sets out across the West to prove his innocence, helping strangers and righting wrongs wherever he goes. Each episode is a new trial, a new town, a new enemy, a new chance to reclaim a little piece of his lost honor. The stakes are always high, and the threat of failure is always looming. What makes Branded such a standout is its relentless focus on character. McCord isn't some flawless hero. He's stubborn, wounded, and carrying a chip on his shoulder the size of Texas. But he never quits, and he never lets the world tell him who he is. Every story is a test of his will, his courage, and his hope that maybe, just maybe, the truth will set him free. Though its original run ended in the 60s, Branded found a second life in 70s reruns, inspiring a whole new generation to question what it really means to be a hero. It's not about how many gunfights you win. It's about refusing to let your reputation define your life. If you want a Western that digs deep and asks the tough questions, Branded still delivers, all these years later. The Outcasts. If you think the Western never pushed boundaries, you haven't seen The Outcasts. This is the show that broke the mold and took TV where few dared to go. The premise? Pair a white ex-Confederate bounty hunter with a black former slave and send them on the road together, chasing criminals, facing down prejudice, and fighting for justice in a world that didn't want them to succeed. Don Murray plays the hard-edged bounty hunter, Otis Young is his sharp, no-nonsense partner, and together they're forced to rely on each other in ways neither could have imagined. The tension is real, the stakes are high, and every episode tackles the kind of issues most Westerns tiptoed around. Racism, trust, and survival all collide as the outcasts battle not just outlaws, but the society that wants to keep them apart. ABC knew they were taking a risk. The show's frank treatment of tough subjects drew plenty of praise and even more controversy. Some viewers were hooked by the action and chemistry between the leads. Others just weren't ready for a Western that forced them to confront uncomfortable truths. In the end, The Outcasts ran just 1 season, but its impact still echoes. It's the rare Western that refuses to sugarcoat history and demands you face it head-on. If you want a show that's bold, smart, and way ahead of its time, you can't do better than The Outcasts. It's the definition of a lost classic, daring, unflinching, and impossible to forget. So, who said the golden age of Westerns faded into the sunset? These lost TV shows prove the Wild West was never really tamed. It just went undercover, waiting for true fans to rediscover its secrets. Which series are you tracking down first, or did we overlook your hidden gem? Let us know in the comments, hit subscribe, and share this with every cowboy or cowgirl you know. The frontier is wide open, so saddle up and join the adventure.